Okay, sorry to keep you all waiting, a little over on our closed session. I'll go ahead and call to order the regular City Council agenda meeting of Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. If you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We just came out of closed session. There was no action taken at this point, and we will reconvene in closed session after the regular agenda. And so I'd like to move to approval of the agenda, and I do have a change that I would like to make. Something has come up between the printing of this agenda that needs to be addressed before the next meeting, and that is how to have discussion and possible action on replacing City Administrator Mary Kelly while she's on medical leave. And so that's a discussion, again, with possible action I think we need to have. How would you handle that, Derek?
It's a 2/3 vote, and you would need to find that the need for the item arose after the agenda was posted, and clearly it did because Mary gave us this notice as of yesterday. And then you would need to find that there is an urgent need to move forward, and because you effectively don't have a city administrator for the next week or so, and there may be things that you need to do, I think you have the grounds to make that. So it would require a 2/3 vote. So that means, since there's 4 of you here tonight, 3 out of the 4 of you would need to approve this.
And this will be agenda item number 5. So can I get a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, moved by Vice Mayor Follendorf, seconded by Councilman Oliveira. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0, so we will address that as agenda item number 5. Okay, let's move on. With that in mind, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Follendorf, second by Councilman Oliveira to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay, we'll move on to staff updates. We have in our packet a consolidated report. City administration is not in here. We had our finance director on vacation, and we have our city administrator on leave. Other than that, are there any questions?
You said she was on vacation.
No, she was on vacation
she
in
was on.
preparation. Doesn't it look like she's enjoying herself? Okay, are there any questions? I have one. Is Dave Myers here?
No,
Oh, yeah.
Dave Myers is here. Oh, my ear.
He's all better. Actually, this is probably more for Steve Flagg. I don't see Steve here, though. I'm just, the Lone Hotel. The last entry we have shows June 8th. Is there any update?
No, I don't know of any update to give you on that.
Okay. Sorry to get you up there. Are there any other questions, comments regarding the staff reports? Okay. Anybody from the public want to comment on the staff reports? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to council updates. Councilperson Matilde.
No news.
No report.
No.
Vice Mayor Follendorf.
Last night was LAFCO, and we approved the SOI, the Sphere of Influence, for CCWD. We also appointed 4 members to go to the Cal LAFCO conference in October, which we need to discuss with Councilmember Herman on if she wants to go, and if not, then if there's another council member interested to go, they can. And we also, Dave Hannum, is he here tonight? Okay. He attended the meeting last night and spoke about the city's issues with CCWD's SOI sphere of influence, and concerns that we had. CCWD should be coming to us in the near future to do a presentation, which I think will be great with the UPA discussion that we're currently having with the FERC licensing and other water right issues that have been ongoing. So hopefully in the next month or two, we'll be seeing CCWD here. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Olvera.
I also attended a LAFCO meeting last night with Amanda, and I also started out to attend the Solid Waste Task Force meeting. Everybody found out it was canceled but me, so nothing happened. And then over the course of the last week or so, I've spent an hour and a half with Debbie Ponte, just kind of getting versed on what's going on with DAC. So that's it for me.
Okay, great. And I have no report.
Can you use the mic when you talk, please?
Me?
Everybody.
Everybody?
I'm right in
All right,
there.
we'll try to bring it a little closer. Okay, time for public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter that's not on the agenda. State law prohibits the city council from acting upon matters not listed on the agenda. Do we have anybody who's interested in making a public comment?
I'm Christy Reisman. I'm a resident of Angels Camp, live on Finnegan Lane. And I'm here because I was very bothered by the fact when I found out about a week and a half ago that at the last city council meeting, the city attorney invited a special interest group to advise this council on matters relating to marijuana, when the city of Angels Camp and its voters already said loud and clear that we do not want cultivation here. Even though we're stuck with Proposition 64, 61% of the voters in Angels Camp voted no on that, and 64% voted no on Measure D. You guys represent us, and we didn't hire the city attorney to represent us. And it appeared to me that he was aggressively pursuing marijuana, which most of the citizens don't want. In the staff report that was in the last city council packet, he stated that he left a lengthy message for the Calaveras Cannabis Alliance on the 14th of June, inviting them to come and share their vast marijuana wisdom with you guys. The agenda notifying us, the citizens, that there was going to be another marijuana discussion didn't get posted until the 15th. So the special interest out-of-town marijuana drug-pushing lobby gets 24 hours more notice than the citizens of Angels Camp do about something that many of us have showed up and said we don't want to cultivation here. 6 plants is absolutely plenty for somebody to hide in their house and be stoned 24/7, 365. So nothing in Prop 64, absolutely nothing prohibits this city from saying, no, we don't want commercial cultivation here. We don't want outdoor cultivation. We can do that. We did do it. We had the ordinance. And I would just like to say that I think it's completely unfair to invite a special interest group with advance notice, and the citizens don't get that same courtesy. It was posted, but there were plenty of us over the years, going back to 2015, that spoke in public comments or during the matters when they were on the agenda. We all said our name. You know who we are. None of us got a phone call. You know that I was against it. You knew several of the people here were against it, and none of us got a special phone call from the city attorney. So I would really just like you guys to really consider that, that the people in Angels Camp spoke, and the vast majority, which is the way our republic works, need to be respected. Thank you.
Thank you. has been a while.
The while is over. David White, I live in Angel Oaks, and I'm here because I'm now able to come back to council meetings.
You closer to the mic, please.
Sorry. I have a copy of the audit that's just been done by the grand jury. And I got to tell you lovely people,
Excuse me, Mr.
my
White,
city council.
that's an item that's on the agenda for tonight,
Is it?
the grand jury discussion, yes. That's item number 3.
Okay, I missed that. Okay,
Okay.
I'll be back.
Thank you.
I'm not so tall, so I can hit the mic. Hi, I'm Lori White. I live in Angel Oaks. David White's wife. I would like to say that I think we have a problem with communication with the city council. I know that because I have been here, I get a notice, I get the agenda once a month because of the meeting. And I know that that's basically what we do, is send out agendas who people who are interested. And I see nothing wrong with that. But I do see something wrong with the number of people in Angels Camp who do not know that this meeting is taking place. And I'm not too sure what the answer is to resolve that problem. And I know that it's probably true in all aspects of, or all levels of government. But we need to address it, especially given what you are going to be discussing a little bit later on with this grand jury problem. So I think it would be a good idea if this council would set up a committee, maybe not just with yourselves, but with other interested parties, to find out how we can better communicate with our residents, how we can get more people involved, how we can get the people of Angels Camp to attend our meetings, know what's going on in our meetings. Unless you set up a committee to address that, you're never going to get this room filled with people that are interested. They don't even know that the meetings are taking place on these days. I know you may put it in the paper, you may do a few marginal things, you may send out agendas, but that's obviously not enough, and we need to do more. So maybe a committee with some interested people could make some suggestions on how we could make it better.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just have Susan Morse, Angels Camp. I just have a question, and I'm also concerned about the city attorney. The city attorney represents city council, as was just said a few minutes ago. My concern is, did city council, and you probably aren't going to answer this question, but think about it, did city council direct the attorney to call in other people to come in on a subject matter that was in opposition of what the people have wanted in the past and have voted for within a year? That's my question, and that's my concern. And also the reports that were attached to these other reports, which are older. These were pre-November election materials. I don't know whether these were submitted by the growers that came in here, or whether these were given to them by, or you by the city attorney. But I want to, as was said before, you represent the people, right? And we want an attorney to represent us, you through us, and keep our best interests in mind. So I'm just putting that out there and reminding everybody that in my mind, the attorney represents the council, through the people. Thanks.
You going to address that?
I think I can answer that. I was directed by the council to bring back a balanced picture of the marijuana issues, not just listening to law enforcement, but also the views of the advocates. That doesn't mean that the council ultimately would endorse those views, but I was simply carrying out the directive that I felt I received from the council. I have no personal stake in this. If you followed my career, not that anyone has, I think you'd see that I've been very objective on this issue throughout my career. So this was not some effort to reach out to any special interest group. This was not any personal thing of mine. This was me simply responding to what I felt the direction was that I had received. So for the public's understanding, for the council's understanding, my job is to present information. Your job, obviously, is to make decisions, listening to the public. I was simply communicating information.
And from my perspective, marijuana is this whole issue is a very fluid issue, and as state laws change, as questions come up, we want this council to be as educated as possible. And I haven't seen anybody, discussing cultivating marijuana in the city. In fact, I haven't seen anybody talking about selling marijuana in the city or delivering marijuana in the city. But we are staying educated. And as far as advance notice, when you can't set an agenda without knowing the people who are going to participate. So the participants in the agenda items are going to know before the public knows. That's just how that works.
So the
hopefully that answers
attorney
questions.
educates counsel, the council doesn't go out and educate themselves? I don't know this because I've not been on the council.
I can't speak for the other council members, but I
Okay.
think we all do a significant amount of self-education, but it also doesn't hurt to have everybody hearing the same information, hopefully in an unbiased situation.
Well, I was under the impression.
So we're gathering as much information, trying to educate ourselves on the issue as much as possible, because it does affect, state law does affect the cities. And we need to
Okay,
know where we
I was just
stand.
thinking that lawyers are here to give you legal advice. And
Correct.
not educate you on whether to grow or not.
It's kind of part and
Yes, I
parcel.
don't know. But
With
anyway,
marijuana industry, that's kind of the same thing. We're getting legal advice. What if we do this? What if we do that? We need to be educated when we have those discussions. That's where we are.
well, I'm not sure if I agree with that, but thank you.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I have a quick question on the subject. One, sorry I missed that meeting, and I did try to find the video online. Do you know if those are now online? Because it wasn't for quite a while, and I didn't get to look like in the last couple days. They are? Where? Well, anyway, maybe later I can ask him where to find it, because I went on and tried to find it and there were some old meetings on, but not that one. So, but I guess my question, because I just wanted to watch the meeting, because I heard, some information, so I wanted to educate myself by watching it. I couldn't. So my question would be, who was the other side? Okay, if the marijuana people were here, who was the other side giving information out? And I'm just asking that question until I can see the video.
Well, the factual summary is that my office interviewed the finance director, the police chief, and the code enforcement officer to elicit their views on the impact on city government and their views about the subject. And then I reached out to the cannabis advocates because I was directed to do that. So those were the individuals who were consulted. I note that our police chief did ask us to include in the staff report a copy of a position paper that was prepared following the Colorado experience, which I think if you read was not in support of legalization or liberalization of local government role in marijuana, and that was provided to the council as well. So I guess if you're asking what was the other side, I think the other side was very adequately represented.
And can I also clarify something? I keep hearing the word commercial grow, and that wasn't the point of our conversation. The point of the conversation was to educate us on Prop 64. We already know that there's an ordinance to ban, we're not changing the ban of commercial grow, so I want to make sure that's very clear. It was educating the council on what the effects of 64 was that was voted by the state of California. So I think there's, the word gets used interchangeably at times, and I want to make sure that the public knows there's a clear separation of what the council was getting information on. Does that, yeah.
Okay. Seeing no more, I'll go ahead and I will close public comment. Oh, one more.
All over us at the moment. David White from Angel Oaks. I just want to say about marijuana, we don't need it in our city. And we've got other things that we need to do. We've got financial problems that we all know about. But in addition to that, I don't want our council, our city council, to think to themselves, we can get out of these financial problems, we'll grow marijuana under license, and we'll charge everybody for every plant. That's no way forward. This is a national problem, and we don't need to lead the pack.
Okay. With that, I'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of our meeting. And we'll move on to our consent agenda. The following consent agenda items are expected to be routine. They'll be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested person may request that the items be removed for discussion. Would anybody like to remove any of these items, A through E, for discussion? Anybody in the council?
Nope.
Okay, I'd like to remove item E for discussion. So I'll entertain a motion on items A, B, C, and D.
Move.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Fallendorf, a second by Councilperson Matilde to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, and D. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0. Item number E, I asked to pull that because I may be alone in this, but I'm in opposition to staff's recommendation that we cancel the City of Angels salary advance policy that we implemented in December of 2015. I know this flies in the face of the grand jury report's recommendation, but I think the grand jury report leaves a lot to be desired, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And if we properly enforce the existing policy, there's not room for fraud. And it's a way of showing our employees that we care about them, especially in difficult times. If an employee needs an advance, it's an advance of money's already earned, and it's just and it doesn't cost the city anything to accommodate the employee. So if other cities, other counties, if they don't have this policy, good. That just makes us more advantage, gives us an advantage in hiring, because we do care about the employees, especially in difficult times. That's my take on it, and I'm curious to see what other council people think.
Well, I'll speak out. I'm in favor of the cancellation. I think it's an extra administrative burden on staff that's unnecessary. I think there's, for most people, I think there's a source of funds that can be obtained in a number of ways that wouldn't involve that extra administrative requirement for the city.
I'm in support of the cancellation. If we do want to go the route of what the mayor is suggesting, I think we should cancel and revisit the policy at a later date. But currently, as it stands, I think I'm in favor of cancellation.
I'm also in favor of the cancellation. And I agree with you, Amanda, in regards to looking at it at a later date. I think that some research is needed, and we can look at other cities, major companies, what's standard possibly, and do some comparison. But right now, I'd like to get a little more educated on it. But as it sits,
This policy was introduced because of the issues that we were having in 2015. This was introduced in the end of 2015, and this was a solution to a problem. And if you read the policy closely, it's very tight as far as you can't have an advance unless there's a emergency demonstrated. You can't have advances twice in a row. And those are the things that we had problems with. The past employee was taking advances without demonstrating emergencies and took 2 in a row, and had we just simply enforced our policy, we would have been fine. But, you know, when that person signs his own checks, there's not a whole lot of enforcement we can do, you know, beforehand. But if we stick to the policy, it's a good policy, and again, it just helps the employees, and it doesn't cost the city much at all. I mean, a little bit of administrative headache to cut a check a week early.
I'm sorry, could you pull that microphone?
Yeah. It's hard when we have all kinds of paperwork and stuff to get those things closer. But, you know, I think it's just a way that doesn't cost the city a whole lot of money to help employees when they're in need. And I think it's a shame to throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you will. We had a problem enforcing our policy. We put a proper policy into place, and I don't think we've had that problem since then. So anyway, I will entertain.
I would like to say something. As it sits now, we have on the books the policies. The policy says that there are 4 advances through the year. Personally, the small amount of research that I've done, that's a lot. I would entertain 1 with a maximum of 2 per calendar year.
Given that it's for emergency purposes, I would agree to that amendment.
And it would have to be, and I also looked up information in regards to what is an emergency.
Okay.
And in our policy, it also states that they have to, in written form, let us know what that emergency is.
Correct.
Can we entertain to bring, if we're going to do any type of amendment or overlook, to bring it back to another?
I have no
Meeting?
problem. I have no problem tabling this till the next meeting, so we have time to discuss it further, if that's what we want to do. I do want to hear from anybody in the public on this matter before we close it up.
Thank you for that, Mayor. You might have noticed I was popping up and down, and I appreciate an opportunity to say something. I know that in the neighboring counties and neighboring cities, they do not have an advance policy. I have worked in government for the majority of my life. Never once have I ever entertained asking for an advance, and I don't think that it's right to allow public money to be advanced to someone prior to payday. Payday is payday. The employees know when payday is, and they should have it that way. And I don't think that by having a policy, I mean, do we make this policy part of our, we want you to come to work for us, we have an advance policy? I doubt it. Those are the kind of things that get you better and quality people. Paying people more money, having decent vacation, providing certain benefits, those get you quality employees. Not saying, hey, if you're having a hard time, we're going to advance you money. I think it is totally inappropriate for this. I was shocked when I saw this in the grand jury report that we were advancing people money. I'm sorry, if people want money, they need to go to the bank or they need to go talk to mom and dad.
Thank you, Mayor, for inviting public comment. I, too, was rather floored when I saw the advance policy. And the first thing that jumped out at me, being a financial person, is that I would hope that the majority of the people that are well vetted by the City of Angels Camp prior to their hire are financially responsible people, particularly if they're responsible for the budget of Angels Camp. And so it is a little disconcerting to think that the person with ultimate responsibility in Angels Camp could be so irresponsible to not be able to make their bills for a 2-week period until the next payday. And so to me, that would be a huge red flag with an employee. And in the case of a true emergency, for example, the Butte Fire, most people have insurance that's going to step in and cover those emergency things. People have credit cards they can take cash advances on, and it is pretty concerning that someone in control of running an entire city or in some sort of an upper-level management position wouldn't have, you know, a couple $1,000s to fall back on for a couple of weeks. So I firmly encourage you to cancel any advance policy. Thank you.
It's going to haunt you, this. Money that's being advanced to individuals is not the city's money. If there is any way that somebody can get an advance on wages, and this tells me it's nearly $8,000, you should be saying there's a bank down the road. I agree with the people who said the same thing. You shouldn't allow in your city the advancement of cash which is not yours to advance. It's there to pay bills and to look after our city. It is not there to fund people's private lives, and we should stop it now.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the dais. One thing we want to make clear is these advances are advances of money already earned. It's not an advance on money that hasn't been earned yet. So there are always, there's a delay between the time you earn your money and you get paid for administrative purposes or what have you, and it can be as much as 10 days. So we're talking about advancing our paycheck, you know, a few days early. It's already earned, so we're not advancing money that's the city's money. This is back on the, we're back at the dais now.
This is a really, really hardcore problem.
I'm going to have to ask you, we're back at the dais, we're having our
You
discussion.
may very well
about-
be, but I'm going to say this. When you take a job, doesn't matter who with, you don't get paid in advance. It doesn't matter if you've worked your 80 hours.
Mr. White, please have a seat.
You
That's not,
still
that's
have
not,
to wait the
you're not
81st hour to
understanding,
get
you're not
paid.
understanding the policy as it is. Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
No, not right now.
Nope.
Do you want to table this for a month, or you want to go ahead and vote?
I think the consensus was to go ahead and do the do a cancellation, but
Okay.
if,
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to cancel.
okay, second.
We have a motion by Councilman Olivera, seconded by Vice Mayor Fallendorf, to cancel the City of Angels advance policy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. That passes 3-1. Okay, we'll move on to the regular agenda. We have a public hearing. We're confirming the diagram and assessment and directing Auditor of Calaveras County to continue to collect assessments for the fiscal year 2017-2018 for the landscaping and lighting district number 1, Greenhorn Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This item, about 5 years ago, packed the auditorium at the high school. That dealt with the wetland issue, and that dealt with litigation. All of you, I believe, were not on the council, or maybe Councilmember Behealy, I think you came on at the very tail end of that. Fortunately, this is really kind of a pretty standard thing. This is your annual budget for the year. By law, a report is required to be prepared that confirms that the cost of providing all of the landscape and lighting improvements and other benefits of the LLD, as we call it, for Greenhorn Creek, that the property owners pay only the cost that benefits them. And this is a comprehensive report that is designed to make sure that happens. The report is self-explanatory. Really, there's no increase in the assessment beyond what has been previously approved. So at this point, I can answer any questions. I have not been thoroughly involved in this process. It's, once the legal issues dropped out, it was more of an administrative thing, but obviously Mary's not here. So I am very familiar with the process. I can answer any questions you have. But really, this is just a document that, something we do every year.
Does anybody have any questions, comments?
No, none here.
Okay, I've got some questions. Let me open up to the public first. Is there anybody in the public that has a question or comment on this issue?
I'm Paul Bukowski from Angels Camp, here to talk about the preliminary engineer's report for this next year. And I noticed, I've been very interested in one part of it, that's the wetlands maintenance that's been going on for many years and been lack of attention for many years. In the last couple of years, they spent quite a bit of resources to correct that, and I appreciate the effort that was done in the past couple of years. And I know you hired a company to be able to properly manage the wetlands because it's an environmentally protected area on the lake. And I was wondering what you've allocated $15,000 to for the maintenance this year on the wetlands, and I was wondering what that consists of, because it seems like a very small amount.
Okay.
You have any question?
Yeah, well, I had the same
Okay.
similar question, so, okay.
All right.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else? Okay, let's bring it back here. Some questions I have. First of all, a little housekeeping. On page Roman numeral 2, we need to have the council corrected. We still have the old city councils on there.
I believe I gave you a copy of that page. If I didn't, I have it.
Okay, and that'll be filed in the, we'll have that correction in the file, okay. And then another question I have is, in the tables on pages 10 through 12, you have your maintenance costs, and then you also have replacement costs. Are the replacement costs some kind of reserve for when projects come up and need to be done, they're kind of amortized? And if so, if we're paying all that out to the contractor, how are those reserves being handled? How do we reconcile that?
We have, I'm sorry, are you Kyle from SCI? I'm going to put him on the spot. Do you have the answer to that, or
Yes.
Can
you want me to stand up to the podium? Sorry, I did not know Kyle was here. Kyle works for SCI and has been involved in this for the past few years.
Okay.
So we're on page 10?
Page 10 is where most of the allocation is $11,000, $11,311.67. And then on page 11, there's $731. On page 12, there's $1,325. So those sums, it shows annual replacement costs, and so I'm assuming that's some kind of a sinking fund or set aside for, I mean, is to replace a lawn? I mean,
Yeah, so,
but it looks like we're paying, then it says down here, note, the district has a fixed price contract to provide these services for $94,000, a little higher than national estimate cost. So if we're paying that out to a contractor, how are we keeping
that's
those
correct.
reserves?
So for those improvements, that's a fixed cost. The other two budgets on table 2 and 3, those aren't fixed costs, so that's not paid out to a contract. But yes, the annual replacement is to create a reserve fund to, in case any improvement deteriorates or needs a replacement in the future.
So how are we maintaining a reserve fund if we're paying it out to a contractor?
It hasn't been happening that way. We've been providing a budget to the engineers And that is the amount that we're spending every year. So there has been no reserve in the last couple of years, keeping in mind that when the big effort to take care of the pond was taken care of, all the reserves that were out there were utilized for that pond rehabilitation that first time. This year, we're contemplating that there's $15,000 worth of cost for the pond to maintain the Pond 1, and I think we have a project for $20,000 on Pond 2. What I have figured into the budgets that I have been providing to SEI is that we have a minimum $20,000 reserve moving forward. I have not up till this time been taking part of that money and putting it into a separate reserve. So what we've been doing is saying 20,000 is there as a minimum reserve, and then we look at the reserve as being usable towards the expenditures the next year, but we can change that process. We just haven't been doing that at this stage of the game.
But still, so we have a contract, are we paying out $94,388?
Yes, we are.
And that's just for maintenance?
That is correct.
So
That is the maintenance contract.
why are our maintenance costs estimated at $82,000 and we're paying $94,000?
Where are you looking?
I'm looking
Page
at
10.
page 10 right now, table 1. It shows the subtotal of the annual maintenance cost, $82,275. Then it shows annual replacement costs, $11,311, for a total of $93,586.
I can tell you from my budgetary standpoint, when I sent it to SCI, the need was the full $94,388. So I'd have to defer back to SCI
Is
on,
that materials cost?
Yes, so when these budgets were created for the engineer's report, it was done with an annual replacement cost. So this is based on the areas that needed to be maintained, how much we estimated. Because the city has a fixed cost, that is the total annual cost for the maintenance portion.
Does our maintenance contract hold the contractor responsible for replacement? I know they replace some trees, plants, sprinklers, that kind of thing, so are they responsible for replacement of anything that goes bad over time?
Dave Myers is shaking his head no, so I think the answer is no.
They're not responsible for that?
Now, the current landscaping contract we have is merely maintaining what's out there with some minor issues. But if there's any large-scale replacements, that's extra work. If there's any large-scale tree replacements, that's all extra work. So just a minor little bit, it's more of a working agreement.
So if I'm looking at this, we're short. Is that what I'm hearing?
I can make this one comment. Every single year we do this, we underspend the budget. So there is every chance in the world that by time we get done with the process, we will have those amounts in the replacement column and we can start a reserve this year. I can't guarantee it'll be exact, but there's almost always some money left that we can start that reserve. The question that would then become, how do we manage that reserve and how many years do we collect it up? Because if it collects up every year, then what happens is you get the same situation we had with the pond, where it all collected up. We had large amounts of money sitting here, and with, you know, we weren't really replacing anything. So we would probably have to follow that up with a plan somehow. But more than likely, we will have enough to put some, if not all of it, into the reserve by the end of this year.
That would be off of items in tables 2 and 3, but not table 1, because table 1, we're writing a hard check out for more than the costs here.
Correct.
Okay. And then as far as to get to Mr. Bukowski's question, the biggest issue that most of the citizens have is with the large pond. And we have just $15,000 scheduled for maintenance there. The $20,000 for other wetlands project, that's does not have anything to do with that pond, is that correct?
We put that in to do some cleanup on the small pond that still needed to be done, but I'm going to refer this to Dave Myers because he takes care of that.
So on the large pond project last year, we had a little bit of money left over with the consultant.
Dave, I'm afraid they can't hear you.
So on the large pond project last year, we had a little bit of money left over from the consultant that designed the project. So I asked him to take a look at the small pond. And if we get approval from the Corps of Engineers, we'll have a small project, hopefully like $10,000 to $15,000 to improve that pond. But that's all in the conceptual stage right now. But that if we spend that money, the $15,000 will accumulate to a larger project. About every 10 years, that pond's going to need a project like last year. And about every 10 years, a small pond's going to need a project like I'm proposing. So as we're getting these costs down, but we're figuring them out.
So this $15,000, is that enough to reduce the reeds that are growing up all around that thing and choking out the pond?
I think
Is
it
it
is
enough
on the
to get
small
ahead of
pond.
it, or is it just maintaining status quo?
Well, about the start of 2000, they had done the same project that I was proposing. So roughly 10 to 15 years, it gets this choked up. So I'm thinking about every 10 years, there'd be a maintenance project on
Don't
it.
we have a horizon report or something that tells us?
That's what I used.
So we're following that plan?
Yeah, well, the Horizon report looked mainly at the wetlands areas and made recommendations on what to do. As I started to implement the recommendations on the small pond, like a check dam and widened area, the Army Corps objected. And that's why I set them with that little extra money back to talk to the Army Corps. So we'll figure out if the Horizon report is accurate. But some of the stuff that they did, I already implemented. We dug out the ditch down at the end of Springhouse. They don't want me to do the check dam, and right now the big concern is where I'm going to dump the reeds at. So those all have reasons.
Are the large pond and the small pond, is that the sum total of all the wetlands?
No, there's like 7 of them.
And is there any activity scheduled for any of that, or necessary for any of that?
No, the main difficulty ones are the ponds, the big ponds and that small pond.
And the one at the entrance on Selkirk? Well, there's another one, I guess, at both entrances there are ponds, right?
Yes.
Are they part of the wetlands?
Wetlands and also wildlife areas.
Okay.
So there's nothing we can do to those to maintain them, other than if there's debris in there. And we've actually gone so far, if there's like a tree that's ready to fall on somebody, we'll take the tree out. But mainly, we're not touching those.
Okay.
I also noticed there's a large increase in management fee, over 10% increase for year over year. I'm wondering why are we,
What page?
well.
Because that should not be the case.
Yeah, so it went
Except
from-
that
it
the
went from-
county fees are based on how much you're bringing in, if you're talking about the county, but the one for our administrative fee from the city has stayed the same every year.
It went from 51,000 to 57,000.
And can you tell me what page?
Well, page 12 is where it's itemized, but I'm trying to remember where I saw year over year would be on page 13. It says total annual management costs from table 3, 57,529. Last year was 51,279. So it looked like a large jump to me.
Two reasons that I can give you just from looking at the list. Number one, this is one of the first years we're making the debt payment for that pond project from the LLD to the water fund, and that's $17,000 worth.
That wouldn't be in that number.
And the second is that the water fees, we had been projecting that we were going to have a project done on the median strip to conserve water and use tertiary water. That project has been dropped, and these are the full level charges that we believe the water is going to be charged for those median strips now. Other than that, all the other numbers look similar to the prior year, except maybe contingency. In the year that we did the pond project, we may not have had as healthy of a contingency because we were trying to get the pond project done. All the other numbers are similar to prior years.
So water, okay. I'm not sure I understood that explanation.
Did the debt service exist in the prior year, or is that new to this year?
I believe we paid it last year, but it may have been scheduled out of the excess reserves for the pond project. I'm not positive off the top of my head.
Do we have last year's report?
I don't have it with me.
Anybody have it? That, it has, it's not in debt service, so it's gotta be in the water, and we're charging 18,000 for water. What is that, what does that represent?
That's the water on the median strips, and feed it to me and I'll
Didn't we
say
change
it.
that over to tertiary water?
No, we had a project, and Dave will speak to you about that, and that project got canceled.
Why did that get canceled? That was a good idea.
It's not in the near foreseeable future. It's not entirely canceled. We basically don't have any infrastructure in there. The Greenhorn Creek Golf Course has the tertiary treated water line out in that area. So getting the connection from where their water line is, which is with Smith, the southern entrance, into the medians is quite a bit of infrastructure cost. Second to that is as they're settling out the water, treated water, how they're handling it at the state, it's a little better to wait on that one because they're trying to make it so it's easier to use tertiary treated water elsewhere. So those two things kind of put the project on hold.
Okay.
Was there a number that was developed for the infrastructure, ballparkage?
Well, you need,
I mean, it's got to go like a quarter of a mile or something to get from one place to the
you're
other.
going to need, a couple hundred feet at least just to get to the first median, and then the second point of connection is all the way up at the first entrance into Greenhorn Creek, so we'd have to get up there somehow, too.
I thought that was done.
Yeah, it's quite an expenditure. And plus, it's not our pipeline. It's still Greenhorn Creek's pipeline, so we'd have to work out an arrangement with them.
Okay. Thank you.
When we put together the budget for that tertiary water project, it was always also going to affect the park, and we were going to use, I believe it was water funds as a matter of conservation for part of that project. If I remember right, it was in the area, the whole project between the two funds was $25,000. And at some point in time, the pond project overran its expenditures, and the city administrator approved us to move from that tertiary water project to the other last year. So the assumption was we weren't going to put the money back in this year, but that happened last year.
Okay. All right, and then my final question is, we're at $285 a unit. Can we charge the $300 a unit and have the extra $15 go to retiring or help to pay down the debt that's owed to the city?
Certainly from a financial perspective, we could pay it down a little earlier and it'll save the LLD money. That would be like almost prepaying a year if we did that. So that's a possibility from my standpoint. I believe if you make that determination, we would have to go back and probably tell the engineers to redraft the report with that correction in it before we adopt it.
Correct.
But we could do that. Ultimately, it saves the money, it pays it off sooner, and then the assessments would go down once that debt was paid, or you would find, if you had other needs, that would be applied to other needs.
Is there a timing issue in getting this on the county roll?
Yes, there is. I think we have to have it to them early August.
Yeah, early August.
So this is the second meeting in July, right? So probably we may not make it. I'm not sure. Have you talked to the county office?
I believe the submittal date is August 10th.
That would make it so we have potential, but I not knowing whether they needed lead-in time. I don't know the answer to that question without talking to them.
Your next meeting is August 1st. That's the first Tuesday.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? No. What do you guys feel about putting it to $300 and repaying debt earlier? Does it matter? Is it worth the delay?
Yeah, I think it is. If they're
I don't know what the order of
comfortable.
magnitude is. It's a full year of making 17,000 go away. Is that the right relationship? And what's the term now for how many years?
I believe we have 6 more years to pay it off. It was an original 7-year schedule when we used the money.
And how much was the principal? Is that in the report somewhere?
I'm not going to guess. I don't remember off the top of my head.
That's not in the report somewhere? I don't remember seeing
No,
it.
no, it's not in this report anywhere.
Okay. My memory must be going, because I thought it was more than 17 times 7, the money that we borrowed, but maybe, that's right, okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I'll motion to pass as is and deal with the $15 at a later date. There'd be an option to do that next year if it's scheduled. Correct?
We can stick to the amortization schedule, and that'll leave it at 285, or we can advance the schedule and put it 300.
We can do that all in time for the county submittal on August 10th.
Sounds like if we pass it August 1st, yeah.
Can't hear.
We're discussing the timing of the assessment if it goes to 300.
Our options are to charge each lot in Greenhorn an extra $15 for the year to accelerate repayment of the debt that was borrowed to do the work that was last year. So we're allowed to charge up to 300 maximum if we're leaving the money on the table. You know, to me, it's just, I would rather pay the debt off early.
And we can pull it off in time with the submittal.
Yes, if you took it back, if you postponed the public hearing and took it back on August 1st, we'd have enough time.
Let's go.
All right, I'll motion to go to 300 and pass it amended that way.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Olivera, second by Vice Mayor Fallendorf to increase the assessment to $300 with the remaining money going to debt reduction. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes 4-0. So now logistics, so that's what we want to do. We got to bring this back next time.
You'll come back at your next meeting on the 1st, and they'll revise the report, and then you can approve the report then formally.
Okay. And for next meeting, I would like a better description of last year's management fees of $51,000 and change.
Yeah, I can provide that.
Compared to $57,000 this year. And then a little correction of the page 2, naming the proper counsel.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, we got that. All right, thank you very much.
Will you close the public meeting? Or the public hearing?
Pardon me?
You're in a public hearing. You want to close it?
Oh, yes, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we have Councilmember Olivera, Board and Commission appointments. What we have is Councilman Olivera took the place of Councilperson Rudolph and has subsequently been assigned to cover all of her committee appointments. And we have a discussion, a couple different things. We have to approve that, and also want to ask Joe if he agrees to accept those appointments.
Yes.
Okay?
Excuse me.
Also,
I wanted to let you know that Linda, Councilmember Herman.
okay. Yeah, and
Got
also
that.
Councilmember Herman would like to be on the board for the Visitor Center. And we are, let's see, we're at the Visitors Bureau.
Do you want
Where
to
do
be
we-
our rep?
She wants to be our rep there, so how does that work? Because right now we have a city employee as a representative and as an alternate. So,
We currently do not have a formal voting position at the Calaveras Visitor Bureau. They do have openings, however, and in our discussions with them, we have been expressing to them, similar to the county, that we would like representation. Their suggestion to us for right now, as opposed to waiting for them to change their regulations on how things are done, that since they have open positions, that you guys could designate somebody and they could be taken to their board to be one of the voting members, and it would still be legitimate. So I think that's where we're going right now. I don't know where it'll go, whether they're going to change their actual regulations to allow one of us and one of the county supervisors to be on it in the future, but for right now, that was what we had discussed.
okay. And Linda did send an email expressing her desire to do this. So if everybody agrees,
Do you have a copy of that email?
I do not have a copy of that email, unless it's on my phone. But it basically is very short, just saying I'd like to represent. Any discussion?
No.
Anything from the public? We'll bring it back, and I'll entertain a motion to appoint Joe to all of the committees that are on our appointment sheet, and also to add Linda Herman as our representative at the Visitors Bureau.
I'll move.
Second.
So we have moved by Councilperson Matilde, seconded by Councilman Oliveira. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay, congratulations. You're official. Okay, now item number 3 on the agenda is to acknowledge receive a report from Calaveras County Civil Grand Jury. Derek Cole, attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Attached to my staff report is a copy of the civil grand jury report. The grand jury report speaks for itself, and so I'm not going to, and it was included in your packet, and I think all of you had read it probably a few weeks ago when it first came out and are very familiar with it. The action item tonight is very limited. The discussion certainly is open for the substance of the report, but as far as tonight's action, the request is, what do you want to do in terms of writing up the actual report? By law, the council is required to respond to each of the grand jury's findings, whether it agrees, disagrees, or whatever, as well as the recommendations. And there are a number of ways I've seen other agencies do that. One, you could just designate one member or 2 members as a subcommittee of the council to work on that. The other is you could direct your staff entirely to do that, or you could have some combination of the two. I know our city administrator has a lot of awareness of these issues, but I think she, because of health issues and family issues she's dealing with, probably will not be available to assist. But in any event, the action item tonight is to draft up assign the drafting of a response, just so it's clear that response then is approved at a future meeting, just like we're here, and ultimately it will be done in a public setting. So before the report back to the grand jury is approved, and before you take any vote as a council, obviously the public will have a chance to weigh in on whatever draft, provide whatever commentary they have, and it will be a very public process. So that is essentially the report tonight. Again, the item tonight, the technical request is for direction as to how you want staff or yourselves to prepare a draft report. But obviously, the agenda item could entail a discussion of some of the merits of what's discussed in here. And obviously, that's open for public comment.
Okay. I think in the interest of transparency and to allow the public to voice their opinion, I think we should talk about the merits of the report. I'll start because I have very strong feelings about this report. Not mincing words, I think it was a politically motivated, biased hatchet job. It had a cartoon on the cover. It's a Calaveras County Grand Jury report, a cartoon on the cover that emphasized Angels Camp. It talked about audits that were already public information and situations in which we were already pursuing, we were already following up on the problems we had with one employee. As per the audits, we knew about it, we took action, and then the rest of the, other than being what was already public, the rest of it was just subjective, politically motivated commentary. They drew a conclusion because of one election where only 2 people showed up for a 3-person election, that there was no interest in, there was lack of interest in the city. The next 2 times we had to appoint council people, we had to decide between 3 and 4 people. There's a lot of motivated volunteerism in this city. Our employees have a lot of pride in their jobs and what they do, and I'm personally offended that the conclusion would be that there's a lack of interest in the city, so we should consider a discussion about dissolution. So again, politically motivated bias hatchet job is what I saw in this, and any response that I have anything to do with is going to be along those lines. Shame on the grand jury for not doing a better job. And had they done a better job and not really understood the city, they'd realize the benefits that the city provides, and they wouldn't have made such an irresponsible claim. With that, anybody else on the council have a comment?
Well, as a
Can you use the mic?
newcomer to the process, I had a similar reaction at first reading, especially with some of the narrative. The word mismanagement just jumps right out and hits you. I've been a party to and subject of audits, many of them over the course of the years, and they're always done professionally, objective, with data, and things that are in process, that are observed. Statements are made in the audits that are normally don't require a response. It just simply says that things are in place to correct these things, if they're mentioned at all. So I would tend to agree with Scott's assessment. I don't know anything about what motivated it or how it came about, but I just think it was poorly presented, and the conclusions were just kind of out of left field. I didn't think it was a well-written document.
I'm gonna echo both of you, and I don't think it was very poorly written, and I think poorly researched, embedded, and there was the substance of the recommendations were not. Yeah, I am going to use the word you used, Scott, and it's an insult that you would think that the only recommendation you would provide to a city that provides so many services that we shouldn't anymore. It just blows my mind.
After I read the report and learned of what was going on, I could see where the public reading the report would get the impression that somehow it was some free-for-all. But also, knowing that before that report came out, I believe every single item listed had been addressed, and addressed in a manner of correcting it and trying to ensure that this city that we all choose to live in is managed properly. I believe that there is great pride in this city. I try to get out and about and talk to a lot of people. And again, Scott, you said the single positions that were opened had multiple people responding. I'd love to see more people here, as stated before. Go out and talk to your neighbors. Talk to people and tell them when these meetings are. I think that the cartoon on the front was ridiculous. As far as I know, that has no place in a report from the grand jury, a cartoon, because it is just that, a cartoon. And did focus Angels Camp. I'm proud of our city, and I'm happy that we have taken care of everything that was addressed.
Before I open to the public, the grand jury knew that we addressed all of the employee whole mismanagement issues. They were all being addressed, and the grand jury knew that, but that didn't show up in the report. In Mr. Macias's opening letter to Judge Healy, he talks about things like we want to make sure that we properly represented the viewpoints and perspective of the complainants. He talked about when you play a game, this is what you need to do. With the cartoon on the front, it was all done. It was just shoddy, and we're going to answer all your questions regarding the issues as best we can. But I want you to be very, very clear, that report wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. Again, how they could come up with even the suggestion that's a possibility that we should all get together and talk about dissolution of the city because there's a lack of interest because of one election. Go back 10 years and show that lack of interest. Tell the volunteers that help the city run there's a lack of interest. It's just a giant insult. And with that, I'll open it up to your comments.
Vicki Reinke, Angels Camp. I read that report when it came out, and I have to say I felt the same way as all of you as a citizen, because I believe that the smallest government is the best government, so the people do have a say. And it's our fault if we don't come to your meetings, and if we're not ahead of things, and it's me, sometimes I'm going, I should have been there, right? So to think that we should let the city go to the county was appalling to me. And so I hope that that is off the table, that that's not even a consideration, and that the citizens of Angels Camp, I agree, we need to be more involved. But how fortunate are we that we can see you on the street and have a conversation and talk about what might be going on. We might not always get our way, but that's what it's about. That's what government was supposed to be about. Small government, people knowing each other to make sure they were doing right for the people that lived in that community. So I'm glad to hear that you all feel the same way, and I would believe I'm not the only citizen that feels this way as well. Thank you.
Lori White from Angel Oaks. I was a little taken back by something in this report. And one of the reasons why I stood up earlier and talked about communication. One of the things that it didn't mention, while there were only 2 people who ran for the 3 positions in the last election, was that when there was that position to be filled, there were actually 3 of us who applied for that position. Veronica and I stood right outside of this door, and she told me she'd received a phone call from somebody on the council asking her to come down and apply. And I thought, oh, okay, well, it doesn't matter. We were both here with our resumes, albeit I wasn't given more than 30 seconds to discuss why I had applied. But I was kind of surprised this evening to find Mr. Oliveira here. I don't know when you joined the council, and there were a few months that my husband and I weren't at your meetings because David had some surgery and he was recovering. But I was a little surprised that the council, particularly the mayor, knowing my interest in the council, didn't give me a call to say, there's another position open on the council, Lori, would you be interested in coming down and applying again? I got no call from anyone. I don't know whether that is politically motivated. Maybe the council isn't interested in me because I'm an outspoken person, as is my husband. So while I know that you all work very hard, and it's an onerous job and you get very little appreciation from it. Sometimes I think for the meetings that we have been to, we go after problems such as, we spent 40 minutes discussing whether or not we were going to have a law in the city saying that we weren't going to smoke. We weren't going to allow smoking on the city streets. We belinger things that sometimes really aren't as important as maybe some of the problems that were brought up in this report. So I'm wondering how political our own city council is, and why I never got a call to say that there was another opening.
For the record, I didn't get a call either. I subscribe to 2 or 3 of the electronic versions of the newspapers, and I happened to see the vacancy announced in one of them, motherlode.com, or maybe it was.
I appreciate that, Joe, and I think you're doing a terrific job just to what I've seen here
I just
tonight.
wanted to clear up how I came to know about it.
Yeah.
And it was through the public venue, and I just followed the guidelines that were published.
And to the best of my knowledge of the 4 candidates that we had that night,
Oh, 4.
I don't believe any of them were called by any council people. To the best of my knowledge, that's the case.
Well, that's probably true, but then why not?
We had 4 people, word got out there somehow. We had 4 quality individuals.
I just wanted to clarify that it was a conversation when I was told that there was an opening. It wasn't a specific, hey, call, come here, do this. It was during a conversation, just so you know, it wasn't like, come get this, you're gonna, there, I don't know, 3 or 4 of us here.
Ma'am, I overheard the conversation, and you were saying quite clearly out there when this door was locked, I got a call this afternoon, told to come down, there's a vacancy. And I have to tell you, we started coming to these meetings 9 months before that, never saw you here once.
Mr. White, can we please stick to the topic at hand, the grand jury report?
It's all part of the problem, if you don't mind me saying so, Mayor, because let me pick up something where my wife left off. The council is responsible for monitoring, as I read this simple document as a non-attorney, council is responsible for overseeing and overlooking what's going on in the city. Well, had your blindfolds on. But let's pick up where Laurie left off. We did spend God knows how much time talking about how we were going to lead the state of California and we were going to ban smoking on city property until one of you at the time said, but what about the golf course? We like a cigar. Oh, that changed everything, and then the conversation came round to, well, how can we actually segregate the golf course? That's just one of the stupid things that we've been up to. Somebody must have known, had they done checking, that one of the signers at the bank was signing checks for himself. Another thing that we talked about when we should have been talking about how to run the city was we need to get ahead of California, because although California, state of California, isn't telling us we're short of water, perhaps we should tell the public in the city we shouldn't wash our cars so often. And somebody asked the question, well, how are we going to know? And one of your members who's here now said, well, we'll get somebody, there's always going to be a neighbor who will report their neighbor. We were talking about watering. California wasn't, but we were, just because somebody said, let's save some water. Another subject, Mr. Mayor, if I remember rightly, it's one of your pet ones. The administrator at the time, I remember saying, It's time for one of the police cars to be changed. It's up to 91,000, and it's our practice not to let them get to six figures. You were the only one who was stridently opposed to doing anything until that car had 99,000 on it. And I suggest to you all on the council, if you had to spend 8 and 9 hours a day in these cars like these chaps do, and my wife used to 25 years ago, you wouldn't wait until it was 100,000. You'd want your police department to have sensible vehicles that fit them, that did the job properly. While you were messing around with stuff that was unimportant, behind your back, the city is giving money away. I asked a question, Mr. Mayor. How are we going to get the 29,000 back that was taken because of the fiddling of the hours? I think it's a very good question, and we need to do it. Because I think we need to look to see whether there's been any criminal activity going on while this money was all moving around. Let me give you some credit card stuff. It's all in the report, but I say to the public, you can get this report on Calaveras Enterprise. It's a 90-page document, but you can narrow it down to 16. It's about page
Mr. Rogers,
21.
please address the council. Thank you.
Okay.
And you just,
I'm communicating with the public.
your time's almost up. You want to wrap it up,
Okay.
please?
$149 on drinks. Red Label bottle, $37. Barbecue grill, no receipt, $99. You should have been worrying about our money, not about watering cars. Because guess what? We've now got a full pot of water just over the hill. And it's time we started understanding that you can't sit there and say it's the public's fault. You got yourselves onto the board. Now do something. And that's not the first time you've heard me say that. You have to do something. You are our leaders. So get on and do it.
I'm Christy Reisman, Angels Camp, and I have to break the rules a little bit and speak a little bit to the audience because I just need to clarify that the reason the City of Angels Camp discussed a smoking ordinance over a 2-year period of time over multiple meetings is because a group of concerned citizens brought it forward, and the City Council was doing what City Councils are supposed to do. And they reviewed 300 signatures, roughly, from concerned citizens in Angels Camp, and also reviewed the fact that many cities and counties already throughout the state of California understand that it's a public health service to limit smoking. So this wasn't a special interest agenda on the part of the City Council. It was a group of citizens, and I was one of those citizens. That being said, I've been involved in government in one level or another in Calaveras County and in the City of Angels Camp since I was 19 years old. And I've been very involved in the City of Angels since 1999 when I moved here. I agree with you. It was a bit upsetting to see that because there was one election in which there were less than 2 people who made the ballot. There were actually 4 people who attempted to make the ballot, and they just didn't successfully understand the elections procedures. The elections procedures are not handled by the City of Angels Camp. They're handled by the county. So I think that part of that actually had less to do with the City of Angels Camp and probably more to do with the fact that I think that the 2016 election season was probably the most emotionally exhausting for everyone in this country, no matter what side of the political spectrum you sit on. I know that I talked to several people who were concerned and who seriously considered the positions, and they just didn't have it in them. They were politically exhausted. That being said, I hope that, I think that it's important to view any kind of criticism, and this is very hard because you guys work really hard. And some of you weren't even involved, you didn't have anything to do with some of the things, you were around for the ripples, but some of the things in that grand jury report started before your time, and that's always really difficult to deal with. But my hope is that the city will continue as a city, that there will be continued involvement, that people will sign up, people will read the paper. That's how I hear about positions being open in political offices, is usually from the paper. And that you'll be able to put together a committee, and that as hard as it is, you'll be able to look at the report objectively and see through the insults and the cartoon, which I agree is not appropriate for a serious report. And maybe look through and go, okay, what lessons can we learn from this so that it doesn't happen again with a different person at a different time or a different account. And I think that if this council is able to do that, then I think you've succeeded. Thank you.
All right, any further comment? All right, we'll bring it back to the dais. I do want to answer, again, in the interest of transparency, I do want to answer questions that came up, or regarding the findings. It's interesting to me that the first finding number one, is a lack of public interest in filling the elected positions. I think we all pretty much agree that's a bunch of hooey. There's a lot of interest in it. In fact, there's so much that some people are upset that they didn't get called. So we do have a lot of interest. So the very first finding is politically motivated, it's subjective, it's not based on fact, and again, it's a hatchet job. Finding number two, same kind of thing. We should create public awareness program for the purpose of gaining greater involvement. Yeah, we probably should. The more communication, the better. The more we can get people involved, the better. But I think that we do a pretty good job of that. It's a small town, word travels fast. Michael McCatton always told me, you go to Turlock City Council meetings, there's 2 people there at most. So we're not the only city that people are somewhat apathetic. When things are running smoothly, you don't have as many people jumping up and showing up at meetings. So, again, recommendation number 2. I mean, really? Again, subjective. Now we get into the findings regarding a city employee. I can't go into as much detail as I'd like, but guaranteed, as far as the payment advances, our finance director discovered those within a few weeks, and you figure pay periods a couple weeks apart right away, and the issue was addressed immediately. The other stuff, the credit cards, and the credit cards came to our attention a little bit later on, and it was addressed immediately. Those credit card bills were all paid back in full. The leave was a more complicated issue. It occurred before I think most of us were on this council. But that was a time when we were going through different finance directors. We had, things were confusing. I think that the employee should have known he was taking too much leave, and I think that sentiment is made clear and is echoed by all of us. When it was discovered, a process was put in place to repay that leave. There's a question as to whether there's still money owed. It could be as high as $29,000, we've all heard, and it could be as low as zero. We don't know. We're investigating that. We're in the process of doing that, and I can't really go much more into that. But we're not letting this thing lie. As soon as we found out about it, we started addressing the issue right away. And so other than that, there's calling for a forensic accountant. We had an independent accountant come in there and do an investigation. So we did that. Grand jury knew we did that. Why didn't they put that in their report? There's some questions about the evaluation forms and whether they're adequate or not. And that, again, is a subjective issue. We could probably put some better, put some better forms together, but our forms do ask a lot of questions. They do have space for narrative comments, and those narrative comments are used extensively. So issues that are pertinent, they get in there. Again, no mention of that in the report. So I think that pretty much addresses a lot of what's here, and we're going to get together and we're going to come up with, instead of me just responding, we're going to come up with a joint response. And we are acknowledging that we received the report, and
The question is, how do you, as a council, how would you like to present a final report for you to approve? And then we need to formally send it to the presiding judge of the Superior Court.
what do you recommend?
Well, my recommendation, Mr. Mayor, is obviously you probably know more about the issue, perhaps, and what I would recommend is that you and I and Mary, had she not been dealing with the issues, that the three of us probably would take a stab at it. But perhaps you and I can work on it, or since you and I are most familiar with the issues, and present something to the full council and obviously to the public for approval at a meeting in August.
We have to respond by September 5th, is that right?
Yes, so you need to do this by your second meeting in August, really effectively, unless you want to have a special meeting.
Okay.
Because your first meeting in August will be too late.
Okay. Would anybody else like to be involved in that process?
Yes, I would.
Okay. We can have we have
Two council members,
Okay.
and that's a subcommittee.
No?
My only concern is, just making sure some of the information that,
Well, whatever we do, we'll come
my-
back to council
okay.
for discussion. That'd be all right?
yep, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
As long as it comes back so we can comment.
Yes,
Okay.
you will.
So again, the goal is complete transparency. No one's hiding anything, so I'm anxious to go ahead with that process.
So then you would want a motion, if it's the pleasure of the council, to appoint the mayor and Councilmember Olivera with the assistance of the city attorney as the staff support.
I'll motion that.
When we bring it back, before a second, when we bring it back, will other staff be able to make sure that we have certain things written in
Yeah.
here as well, outside of just you?
Yes, what I would recommend is that we would have Mary, when she has time, and then our finance department, and any other department would have some comments. That perhaps that's something I can do to avoid any sort of serial meetings, that's something I can take to them and elicit their comment and get their suggestions, and then bring it back to the full council in the public meeting setting.
Okay. And I'd like to bring this back August 1st, so we have one extra meeting to deal with it if there's any significant changes.
It's fine with me. I will advise that I will be out on vacation. I can have someone here from my office to do the city attorney side, but I will be gone. But I can work with the two of you in the next week and a half.
Okay.
By the time we get it to an agenda, I would have to have it finished, so.
Okay. So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Agenda items need to be done by next Monday or Tuesday to get into the August 1st. That's a pretty tight deadline.
I can put it.
Let me interject there for a minute. Thinking about that timing and my calendar, I might want to defer to one of you to participate. I can do it, but a lot of it would have to be by phone.
Okay.
Is that okay with you guys?
If that,
I just didn't want to exclude anyone who wanted to be a part of that, in that part of the process, but again, whatever final answers come back, they're only not final, they're going to come back to the council for discussion, so we can have input at that time.
And I would be on the phone anyway.
And you're on the phone anyway?
yeah.
Okay.
If you're fine doing it all by phone, I don't see why you can't.
Yeah, I haven't seen the schedule yet, but I'm looking at my calendar and I'm thinking it's bound to happen that, we're going to want to meet and I can't be there physically, but I can be by phone.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Vice Person Matilde, Vice Person, you can leave. Councilperson Matilde, seconded by Vice Mayor Follendor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 4-0. Okay, now we move on to item number 4. Consider authorizing the mayor to sign a letter opposing SB 649 regarding placement of cellular facilities on municipal property. Derek?
This fell to me, again, because of Mary's absence, but I do appreciate Susan's assistance on this. I think the bill, I think it's pretty self-explanatory what this bill would do. The position paper that's already been signed by several cities is here. The real question is, do you want to weigh in and authorize the mayor to sign a letter? This came up very quickly late last week, and so we felt like we would present it to you. If you want to weigh in, great. If you don't want to weigh in and just rely on what your sister cities are saying, that's also fine, but we felt like this should be brought to you. Susan has taken the laboring oar on a proposed letter, which is included, which is based off of a template that the League of Cities has prepared. So really the question to council is a policy question. Do you want to weigh in on this? It's not really a city attorney question, but it's something I'm happy to assist with because I am somewhat familiar with this bill.
Okay. Any questions or comments, council?
None here.
Any questions or comments from the public?
Furman Brown, Angels Camp. Regarding self-service, I was in the first meetings with the survey to how to improve the city, the $180,000 grant that was done, and you've gotten reports on it. And I went to the first meeting and I said, all the petunias and the umbrellas aren't going to improve the city. You've got a couple basic items that have to be done in order to get business and to keep the city going. And number one was self-service downtown. The self-service downtown is atrocious. And as an example, the other day, a lady gets out of the car and the husband gets out. The lady starts to look on the street and the husband takes out his cell phone. He says right in front of me, honey, we've got to go. We don't have self-service here. Now that I witnessed 2 weeks ago on Main Street. That's serious, guys. That is really serious. So I'd like to mention that we need self-service. If it takes a tower on a public building, we need self-service. And the council voted down a couple proposals for self-service when Verizon, not Verizon, but Golden State was here, and I was very disappointed. We even offered the corner of, to put up one of the trees there at the old Vintage Realty. We offered that corner. But, yeah, we do need self-service. So whatever you do, please look at that, okay?
Can I?
Different subject. I wanted to speak in favor of what our friend has just been saying. One of the ways we can improve this city is by having a cell system and a Wi-Fi system within the city so that you can use your cell phone wherever you drive in the city. And at this moment in time, there's no cell service at the post office on Main Street. Nothing. As for putting equipment onto municipal buildings, I can't think of a better place for them. AT&T engineers told us 10 days after we moved in 18 months ago, their nearest tower is 50 miles away and it's fed into the city on a 1935 copper cable. Comcast is the service that actually feeds most of the stores and the banks up and down High Street. I promise you, you can take a survey. If we're going to move this city out from where we are, there are lots of things we've got to do, and I can't but agree with my friends here. We need to bring the city into the 21st century, and if we have to use municipal buildings to help these people in the industry to set us up with a cell phone service and a Wi-Fi service, then that's what we should do. Why should we expect private individuals to have towers when the municipal body, the city, doesn't want to do it? I think it's right. I think that on this case, the state is right. We need cell service. We only have, at this moment in time, we only have Comcast. AT&T have admitted they can't do it, and we need, through you, to not object to what is being suggested about municipal buildings. If we can use city buildings to enhance the cell service, then that's what we should be doing. Let's move forward at least so that when visitors come here and they drive down the street and their phones cut out while they're talking to people in other vehicles and maybe even home. It's appalling. This is the 21st century. We put a man on the moon 50 years ago, and we can't get cell service in Main Street. I appeal to you all, don't sign that letter.
Okay, let's bring it back to the dais. Amanda?
Yes, so this has been a huge topic down in Sacramento, and what I think the misinformation of what this bill actually is that the cell companies are going to bypass us sitting up here. So I'd like to, I'm going to propose the question to the public. Are you willing to have Verizon or any other such carriers just put a pole in the middle of our town without having it not blend in with the historic area? That's what the point of the bill is. It's not to say we don't want telecommunication. It's we want control of what it's going to look like, where it's going to go in town, and we're not going to be told by corporate where and how it's going to be implemented. And so if you're in favor of us letting go of that control, then, the council we won't sign this, but this is showing the support that we don't want them telling us what to do in this here. We want to have a say in it, and it's about the local control. It's not about not having the telecommunication. So I want to make sure that, and Derek, please correct me, but it's been an ongoing issue. It's a huge issue down in Sacramento, and it's been one of the highlights outside of SB1 that has been conversations with cities and local government. Is we don't want corporate coming in and telling us how we want to put our towers up. So that is the meaning behind this bill. It's not to say we don't need it. I agree. I can't get cell phone service in my own house. I am all for getting it in this community, but I think we need to have a say in how that is implemented.
Yeah, just to clarify, nothing stops, if this bill is not enacted, nothing stops the city from negotiating with any carrier to bring cell service, and there's nothing that stops the city from cooperating to provide that. Basically, what this does is it gives the cities no control whatsoever, and it basically lets the cell carriers pay cities a pittance for the right to locate. But, so, I think, again, it's not my place to tell you what positions to take, but I think the concerns you've heard from the public can still be addressed, even if this bill is not enacted. I think, if anything, you're losing the right to negotiate.
Yeah. And I think it's very important to keep that local control with not only the council, but the planning department, and keeping that, this would remove all of that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that. I don't think anybody minds the cell pole behind O'Reilly Auto, which looks like a tree. A lot of people don't even know it's there.
Yeah,
You know
but,
Can you take the podium,
yeah,
please?
sure.
and you're correct, but that's because the city mandated that. So we wouldn't have that if this bill passes.
No, I agree with you,
Yeah,
Amanda.
yeah.
I'm all for it,
Yeah.
and I understand what you're saying. I just say we need it.
Yeah.
We need cell
I
service,
agree.
and
Yeah.
I don't want them to come in either. I agree with you. I'm not opposed to this bill. But that tree back of O'Reilly's is not a bad thing to have in the city.
No, and that's what we want to keep.
And that's what we want to keep. That's true. So I'm in favor. You're right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
by fighting this bill, basically, we're saying state, it's our city, we have a right to tell what size, where to put it, all that kind of thing. So I'll entertain a motion. We've already, Mr. Ryan, I need you to please sit down.
To speak twice.
I need you to please sit down. This is the second time you put down.
Why?
We have brought it back to the table, we're about to entertain a motion. I'll entertain a motion.
Move.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Follendorf. We have a second by Councilperson Matilde to authorize the mayor to sign a letter opposing SB 649. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay, now we have our agenda number 5, and we added earlier on how our city administrator has notified us that she'd like to take a medical leave. We don't know the length or the duration of that leave, so that puts us in a situation where we have to do something to try to address her absence. The good news, it seems like she will be able to participate at least part-time, phone calls here and there, that kind of thing. So we need to have a discussion about what we do. And Derek, you have some recommendation, or?
Sure. At this point, you have another meeting in 2 weeks, and we may have more information. My suggestion, and again, it puts the burden on you, is that perhaps the mayor, the vice mayor, and again, I'm volunteering you without your consent, or a council member, but no more than 2 of you could perhaps take an extra role in coordinating with key staff, whether it's me, Susan, Julie, Dave Myers, Dave Hannum, while Mary is out, so that you understand what the departments are doing and can give direction. Obviously, Mary, in our system of government, is the head of the administrative body of the city and answers, the department heads report to her and they have staff meetings, so she's not available. But it doesn't appear that she'll be out long enough to go out and possibly contract with a contract city manager. We can certainly look at that if her absence goes a longer period of time. But if anything comes up this week or next week, you need to have something in place. So my recommendation is that either the mayor or the vice mayor or 1 or 2 appointed council members would take on the responsibility to communicate with the key department heads informally to make sure that they're doing their job and that they're moving forward with whatever initiatives they're moving forward with, and that there's a chain of communication. So the other option is you could direct staff to, presumably me, just because, or Susan, to look at options for having someone, fill in, whether internally or externally. But at this point, I think we don't have enough information to know whether that's something you should be doing. We could certainly, at a future meeting, bring something back to you. But I think my concern is that with Mary dealing with what she's dealing with, there needs to be some immediate action to make sure that if staff has a question, if a department head like me has a question, who do I go to get resolution? And my recommendation would be that it would be the mayor or vice mayor, or a combination of the two.
Okay. Discussion?
Well, I think that recommendation has got some validity. I think between the two of you, if you have the time, oversee those operations and step in, and you're willing, I think that's a workable solution.
I agree, as long as you feel that you have enough time to check in with the department heads, and we're hoping that this is a limited amount of time. If it seems to be extended, then of course we would have to address it in the near future, but I I have confidence in your abilities, if you do, if you have the time that you can do that. Just because I don't know if there's any other staff members that are not overloaded.
Yeah, I'm fine with that recommendation.
Okay, I am too. Do I need to take this to the public?
Yes.
Any comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back here for further discussion and motion.
So if I may recommend, the motion would be to appoint the mayor and the vice mayor to perform the city administrator's duties pending her absence until further action by the council.
I do have a question. I'd like to limit it a little bit. I don't think I want to get, information-wise, we can pass that, but I don't think I want to get involved in any disciplinary actions, nor initiating projects. And so.
Correct. So, yeah, it would be so it would exclude initiation of discipline or initiation of new projects. If there's a disciplinary need, I think that would have to be referred to me, and then I would have to consult. But I think, yeah, I think you can limit that.
Over the next 2 weeks.
Over the next 2
Yeah.
weeks, yes.
Got it. Okay.
Well, I'd make a motion that we do exactly that, without remembering word for word what we said, appoint the mayor and the vice mayor to oversee administrative operations excluding discipline and project initiation.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay, with that, we'll go on to Susan, calendar.
Okay. On the 19th, there's a TAC meeting for COG. And the 20th is at 8:30 a.m. is the Museum Commission meeting, and also 10:30 a.m. is the DAC Executive Committee meeting. They've moved it from the fourth Thursday to the third Thursday permanently. A food truck event, again, get there early, on the 22nd. On the 25th, it's UWPA. The 26th is NCPA's annual commission dinner in Murphy's, and I would like to hear from those of you who have not RSVP'd so that I can do that for you. And we're back here on Tuesday, August 1st at 6 p.m. for a council meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.